Yeah. Hello everyone. Thank you for being with us. I'm Aidas, Program Manager at the AB Innovation Park. Thank you for joining in person and online. Today we will have a seminar by Dr. Yousif Asfour, our Executive Director. He will be instilling us with his wisdom about organization development, team and culture relation. So please, without further ado, I'm going to give the floor to Dr. Asfour. Can you guys hear me? Everybody's hearing us from Zoom, right? I can't see anyone, so.
Yes.
Can you guys put your camera so I can see it? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Good. Can you see me? No. I don't know where the camera is. So no, I don't send this. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. I know this was going to be mostly online. I would have done it differently, so my apologies. So, Hanny was telling me that you wanted a discussion around team building and organizational development. Right? I tried to put some points together. This is kind of a presentation, but let's keep it as discussion as possible. Okay? This is really based on my experience. And we'll take it from there. Hanny, you might want to stay here just in case people raise their hands and I can't see you.
I'm seeing.
Oh, okay, good.
Recording in progress.
Okay. So, let me start by assuming I know how to use technology. We need the CIO here. By the way, they used to tell me I have the technology death rate. Anything I touch dies. I remember when I was at NYU, I was a CIO there. Things were working perfectly for everyone, except two people, me and the president. Okay, so let me start by asking you guys, both online and online. I can't see people very well, so what do you think the role of a leader is?
Lead on the journey.
Lead, what does that mean?
Be in the process, not just give instructions, like be on the ground with
Okay.
Show up every day
Show up every day. That's something to do. Okay.
and know what's for the next week, month, and years to come.
All right. So look ahead. Anyone online has an idea? Yes, Hekman.
To inspire.
Inspire. Okay.
I've always
Rida.
had this debate that the leader needs to motivate people, and for that to happen, they need to take a step back.
So if you want to take notes, I mean, you guys came up with some good things. Inspire, show the vision, right? Lead, show up. I think a big part of leadership is being present, and we can talk about that later, right? Present not just physically, but also mentally, emotionally, etc. There's one definition of leader that I really like. It's certainly not the only one, but this is coming from the U.S. Air Force manual. If you have a chance, check it out. The U.S. Air Force Leadership Manual. It's only 24 pages. If I find a copy, I'll share with you guys. But really, leadership is really about influencing and directing. So so you're influencing people. You're not just forcing them, right? And it's about basically the concept of must keep in mind two fundamental things. And what I really like about this definition is that leadership is about two things. It's about the mission and it's about the people, right? Mission, the leader's role really is to do two things. Clarify the mission. What is it we're trying to do? Make sure everybody understands what we're doing, why we're doing it, why it's important. And the second part of it is make sure that your people, your team, are equipped to deliver that mission. What does equip mean?
have the skills,
Have the skills. What else?
Resources.
motivation.
Motivation. Environment. The team dynamics we want to talk about. Really? So leadership really is about two things, in my mind. It simplifies it. It's about really, this is what we're about to do, and create the environment for your team to succeed. And in fact, I joke around, I think Kenny and maybe Rida have heard about this. When people ask me, what do you do? What do I tell people?
I like to drink coffee and talk to people.
All I do is walk around with a mug of coffee and talk to people. Why? I actually don't do the work. I just drink the coffee. But by talking to people, I'm making sure they understand the mission and make sure they're motivated and they have all the right tools. My job as a leader is to actually let people know what needs to be done, create the environment, and then remove all the obstacles out of the way. Make sense? So if you keep that in mind, the rest of the talk is, well, how can we do that? Okay? Sorry, any questions from online? No? I don't see faces. So.
Yes, okay, Maria demonstrates.
Okay, all right, so you let me know. Okay, all right.
Howard Schultz is the next CEO of Starbucks.
Yeah, I believe he is, yeah. So he's basically saying, when you're surrounded with people who share passion, commitment around a common purpose, right? It's another way of saying, guess what? It's about making sure there's a mission and making sure that people are excited about the mission, make sure you train them well, make sure you give them the right tools, and make sure you remove any obstacles out of their way. Okay? And the reason I like the leadership, the Air Force One, forget the politics, forget the military. I'm not very big on military, but there's a lot of leadership in there. Think about it. The military is the only place in the world where they have a mission and you're sending your troops and they know they're going to die and yet they do it. That's quite inspiring, right? So I'm not saying you should do that, but okay. So what I wanted to do is spend like the rest of the talk talking about what are the kind of things that you can do. And I came up with 10 things. There's many more, and not in particular order. The first thing you need to do is define your mission, right? And the team's mission, I should have left it. What do you think your mission is? No, it's all up here. Yeah. So the mission really is, basically what you want to do is, the mission is, why do we exist? Why does my company exist? What is it we're about to do? Why are we so important? Or if it's a team within a company, I know what the company wants to do. Why do we have IT? What's the role of IT, right? That's the mission. With my bad French, it's the raison d'être, right? The reason for being. Now, the way to build a mission, there are many ways. I've seen missions that are crap, excuse my French, and I've seen missions that are really good, right? But the way to do it is you need to make sure you involve everybody in it. So basically, the way we've done it before, and it works very well, right, is to involve the stakeholders, but if you get everybody in a room and say, what's the mission? Things will die, right? And typically, I used to have, there's a rule, I don't know if you've heard it. If you want to get something done, do it yourself. If you want to kill a project, that's the opposite, assign it to a committee.
Give it to it.
Right? So you don't want to design this by committee, but you want everybody involved. So the way that works with us, at least works with me, is...
Can you repeat the statement?
Roughly speaking, if you want to get things done, just get you or get somebody to do it. If you want to kill a project, you can use this strategically, by the way. Oh, refer it to a committee. And it does, right? So this is how sarcastic, by the way, but it's true. So the way to do it is start with the key people in the company, like the president, the CEO, the founders, say, what is our mission? Come up with a draft. Then involve your senior leadership or your managers, right? Say, okay, here's what we think the mission is. Help us refine it. Now they can edit instead of create, and then you set the general direction, but they can add in they might add more detail, more nuances, make it better. Once you've done all that, then you share it with the rest of the company and say, okay, we've discussed it as the leadership team, we've discussed it with all the key stakeholders, and this is what our mission is. So start with you or a few people, get a smaller trusted group. It could be your board members, it could be your other stakeholders, get them involved, and then once you finalize that, then you can share it. By doing that, you've managed the balance between getting people involved and doing it yourself. This way, everybody buys into it. I'll give you an example. Actually, that's a Sandy story. I don't know if she's told you that one. We were working with a client once, working with executives, and we did this process. We went to the senior CEO and said, what do you think the mission is? Then after we talked to him, we got all the senior leaders, then the mid-layer managers. Then once all that was done, we shared it with the company. And there was one of those senior managers, as we were presenting to the company, sitting next to one of his employees. And as we were talking about the vision and mission, he looked at his guy and said, see that comma there? I put it there. So now they have ownership of the mission, right? It's not just you dictating, it's getting them involved. By the way, stop me anytime. I don't want this to be a lecture. I want this to be as interactive as possible. The trick, though, is to make sure that your mission also is understandable. I mean, we have had not overly complex. I've seen mission statements that are 6 pages long. That's not a mission statement. I've seen mission statements that have half a paragraph. That's not a mission. Why? Because people don't get it. You want people to get the mission, right? Because if they get it, they get passionate and they start. An example of that was one of our clients was once, their CEO was very adamant that everybody had to know what the mission was. And whenever you stop somebody, say, what the mission? But the mission was like a paragraph. People were so scared, they started writing them on their hands. So he can read the mission, he can recite the mission. Does he understand the mission? So the key is to keep it very simple, catchy, and make sense. Here are 2 examples of great missions that I found. I worked in a startup once, and the team, I headed the engineering part. And our job was really to develop the products, make sure that we have amazing products. Our job was also to make sure that those products are reliable and that our clients would use them. So one of my colleagues said, okay, our mission is really 6 words. We build cool stuff, easy to use, don't break. So if I came out to an engineer, what do? We build cool stuff, easy to use, don't break.
That works for every company.
Right? Yeah. That's why I use that example, because, but now everybody focused on, so what I'm doing, is that something that relates to my mission? Am I building cool stuff, easy to use, don't break? If not, don't do it, right? Another one is the one at AUB. IT is very complicated. So what's our role? Our role really is to transform teaching, research, and student life. Again, so if I'm doing something and it's not helping do any of this, it's not part of our mission. So think of, so you're almost marketing, right? And coming up with slogans and keep it that simple. Any questions?
Do you think people in this day and age should use like an LLM to help them figure these things out, or let's better have the grades of the team?
My view, I use LLM all the time. But you also have to use it with brains. Let's digress a bit. My view is the following. I've said this a few times. It used to be, right? Think of LLM as just another tool. It used to be that we acquire knowledge. Then, over the past few decades, we learned how to do critical thinking, to analyze. Now with LLM, we have the opportunity to do even more than that. We have the opportunity now to identify the real problems and have the tools help us solve the problems, have the tools analyze, and have the tools get the knowledge. But to do that, that means our skills have to change from analytical thinking to actually asking questions. Because any of you have used LLMs?
What is it?
ChatGPT.
Large language model.
Yeah. ChatGPT, LLM is the technology that ChatGPT is built. The key to me is, with LLMs, with ChatGPT, you ask the right question, you get great answers. You ask the wrong questions, you get crappy answers. So it's learning about to ask the right questions. Right?
Even I had feedback from so I had some subcontractors using LLM to change the scripts. And since we are going with an innovation, we didn't understand what we're talking about.
Yeah.
So it was a disaster. So they changed the script because other than they have to rely on data analysis, they're not innovation. So when we're talking to a new term, new technology, even the script was 1 minute. It was completely incomprehensible after the ChatGPT. So yeah, that was some experience. Indirect.
So yeah, there's a new job title now.
Prompt engineer.
Prompt engineering.
Absolutely. I think it shouldn't be a new job. I think every one of us, the way I think about LLMs, I know we're digressing a bit, but the way, that's my personal opinion. And please let me know today or later if you disagree. But my view is LLMs is just to me another tool that's doing a lot of the analysis and a lot of the information gathering that I used to spend hours doing. That frees me up to really identify what is the problem I'm trying to solve. Because solving this, coming up with a product, coming up with a service, is really trying to identify what problem am I trying to solve. But now I'm free to do that instead of doing the ML. I can do it. So that's my view.
Yeah.
You're taking away the most creative and enchanting process of discovering your product. Because when you're doing research for a certain topic, you all read books. Along the way, you find stuff you weren't looking for.
Yep.
What be much more important than what you're actually looking for and makes you pivot. So when you give this job to ChatGPT, he doesn't want to pivot. He's a systematic. So you're losing all this.
I'm not suggesting that you give it to ChatGPT. I'm saying leverage ChatGPT along everything else you do. It's a tool to accelerate some things, but not everything, right?
Can I ask a question, please?
By the way, just as an aside, I'm going to confess, I use ChatGPT to help me with this. But to be honest, it's my content, my material, but instead of spending 6 hours trying to structure it, it helped me structure it, then I spent another few hours. Instead of this taking me 3 days, it's taking me 1 day to do.
I think the direction things are going is everything automation, less human intervention. Perhaps maybe 10 years down the line, it's going to be no humans, all...
Can I suggest something?
Yeah.
I'll make 2 comments. The first comment, and then we need to get back. Sorry. No, but this is fun. Maybe we can have another discussion about it. But 2 things I would say about that. That's what they said about the steam engine. That's what they said about the printing press. And that's what they said about computers. So it's...
And you still have books.
And actually things are getting even better, right? The second part, which I think is scary, is how does ChatGPT learn what to do? From the content. Who's producing the content?
Everyone.
ChatGPT.
ChatGPT.
So in 5 years' time, ChatGPT will be learning on ChatGPT output. So there's a danger there that the quality of the content might start going down, unless we start adding additional content. That's something I think, to me, that's the scary part. Yeah. Anyway, so back to this. We can spend another 6 hours on this if you want. But I think you asked me to talk about this. So here's a template. It's not perfect. Some questions, just to help you think through putting your mission. What we can do if we have an hour, so I don't know that we're gonna, I was gonna give you 5 minutes to think through those sort of questions, just so you can think about them now.
This is the most annoying part of any training.
What?
Because we don't think in a structured way.
The training?
No, we.
Yes.
You think you're trying to make a structure.
So I'll tell you what, let's invest 5 minutes. I don't want you to take a piece of paper, right? And try to answer I'm not going to ask you what the answers are, right? But think for 5 minutes about what the answers to those questions are, so that by the time you get home, you can start thinking about a mission. We'll give it 5 minutes, yeah.
So everyone online, please see the slide, and it'll take 5 minutes to use the framework to find your mission statement, and then we can.
Did I think about the time?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Thanks. I'm noticing you probably need more than that. That's it. By the way, these are slides are going to be shared, right? So you can use them.
For the multiple products, usually the value proposition is a little bit different. In our case, we have a product for the students and another product for the university as an institution.
But ask yourself, that's fine, products can be different, right? But
Intersection.
why does a company exist? What is it you're trying to, what problem are you trying to solve? Right? The products are means to accomplish that mission. Because that, once you have a mission, that could help you also filter out. You come up with millions of ideas, but you have finite resources. Where should I put my resources? Does that help? By the way, most people who are successful, that's a personal opinion of mine. People like Elon Musk, Bezos, Bill Gates, the advantage of us over all of us, that's a personal observation. It's not based on data, it's based on intuition. It's because they knew what they wanted to do very early on. They were very laser focused. Right? Now, it doesn't mean that we have to be that young to be focused, but the sooner you know exactly what you want to do, the sooner you are focused and nothing stops in your way, the sooner you'll succeed. That's my thing. It's purely about focus, well, and energy and that, but focus is the key. And mission is part of creating that focus, but not just for you, remember. Leadership is about you being focused and making sure your whole team is focused.
That's what Elon Musk usually
Yeah.
does.
Yeah. And so the mission is one step, one tool to get your team focused. And in order to do that, you need to develop the mission, but you also need to make sure everybody on the team not only knows the mission, understands the mission, is passionate about the mission. I would argue that part of the reason AUB is so powerful is because its mission is very clear and very strong. And if you talk to anybody, from President Khoury to me to everybody else, the reason I'm at AUB is not because of the pay, it's not the best pay. Partly because of the people, but but mostly because I believe in the mission. I want to make a difference. Right? And so the mission is critical to get it right. Now, missions evolve over time, by the way. It doesn't have to be fixed yet. Any other comments or questions?
I think also the mission statement is important in hiring, because people who gravitate towards the mission, you get like 1,000 applications, but at least 10 of them will really buy into the mission without even speaking to them.
Can I modify what you just said? It's not the mission statement, it's the mission. The mission statement is an articulation of your mission, right? Just make sure that you articulate your mission very clearly. Again, you have to ask the question. It goes back to the ChatGPT discussion. Think about the question, why? What is my reason for existence? Why did I create this company? What is this company all about? And if you can push the mission and make sure that the people in your organization are passionate about the mission, you can sit down and drink coffee and everything will happen.
Why not coffee doesn't drink?
Unconsciously, when I'm writing the description on my LinkedIn profile, I wrote down, we are shaping the future of education with tech and creativity. I was not thinking about that this is our mission. But does it make sense, or is it broad?
Now, people argue between mission and vision. I've gone back and forth with this. Right now, I'm being very bad and lumping them together. But one of them could, to me, the vision is, what do I want the work to look like when I'm done? The mission is, what do I need to do to get to that vision? Right? But it's become semantics, right? The key is make sure that, the whole point is to make sure that you are clear on what is it you're trying to achieve, and make sure that your team is clear about that. Now, typically in a larger organization, you have the company mission, which trickles down to the division mission, which trickles down to the group mission, and they all have to be aligned. So the company will be broad, the group will be more specific, and the team will be really, really specific.
Question 6 again. It's very difficult to answer. I don't know how the goals support the organization.
We'll get to that, right? We'll get to that. I was debating whether I put this here or later.
It's very tricky.
The trick, actually, that's the key though, right? In fact, let's go to, are we all set? Can we go to the next point?
Yes, sir.
Basically, your goals really should be tied back to the mission. If, for example, my mission is to shape the future of education, what are my 4 or 5 specific goals that will help me achieve that? If your goals are not aligned with your mission, then you're going to go all over the place. And typically goals need to be very, have you heard of SMART goals? Who's heard of SMART goals? SMART goals, that's what they stand for, right? S-M-A-R-T. They're specific, they're measurable, they're achievable, they're relevant, and they're time-bound. Let me walk you through all of those. Specific, to your point, they can't be very generic. Their goal has to be very specific. I will achieve 50,000, I will enroll 50,000 students this year. Okay? That is specific, because it's 50,000 students enrollments. It's measurable. I can measure it. I can know whether I achieve this goal. It's achievable. It depends on where you are. Maybe this year is 30, next year is 50. Now you want the goals to be a bit
Higher than
more than the way I like to say aggressive, but achievable. Right? We have a goal at AUB Online, and I'm fighting with the board. The board thinks they're not achievable. I think they're aggressive but achievable. We want to get 30,000 students online at AUB by 2030. Okay? Now, I'm fighting with the board. The board says, we don't believe you. I say, trust me. And that's a discussion, right? They want us to be more conservative, but we're pushing to achieve that goal. So far, we're on the track, but I sweat that now.
How many students are at UB
Today, AUB has 9,000 students.
EB online.
AUB Online is we're beginning to offer courses and programs online. Right now we have 2,500 students online. We're looking to reach 30,000 by 2030. Anyway, so they're achievable, they're relevant. This is to your question. Does getting me 50,000 student enrollments achieve my goal of cutting hair faster? No, right? So by defining your goals, the goals don't emerge. The goals, you have to define them, and you have to define them to be directly related to your mission. Again, why? Why are we doing this? Because what's our role? Define the mission and make sure everybody is aligned with it, right? And goals help us do that. And then time-bound. I want to achieve 30,000 students on AUB Online by 2030. If I don't put a timeline, they keep on slipping.
23rd is the time.
Right? So the key is to develop your goals, make sure they're SMART goals, and make sure that they're aligned with your mission. Now, again, if you have a big organization, you do it at the organization level, then you trickle those down. You make sure each team's goals tie up back to the parent goal, to the parent goal. Questions? Boring?
Not
No.
one.
Okay.
I had a debate lately with someone that not every goal should be smart. I had a debate with someone lately that not every goal should be smart.
Probably, but tell me why.
Because I think that many things that are very good to have are not measurable. For example,
Give me an example.
can
Okay.
but
Listen,
yeah.
these are frameworks, right?
Yes.
You have to be pragmatic. I think the fundamental principle is the following. The fundamental principle is you want to make sure that you have a very clear direction. And you want to make sure that you can measure how close you are to that direction, right? Now, if you tell me, yeah, but there's a goal, I'll give you a real example. Our goal at AUB Online, one of our goals is to expand AUB's reach 30,000 students, and produce revenue, additional revenue to AUB. So we get from the faculty, Yeah, but we're FHS, we're in health. We want to help nurses, and nurses are people that want to help. Yeah. How does that relate to AB online? And this is where you start having debates. So we want to give courses for free. That's fine. But back to the goal. I'll give those courses for free to attract more nurses that will pay decent. So you start, if I just want to start building courses for free and forget the goals, soon enough, you will not reach those goals. Either change your goals or change your attitude. Right. Now, not everything has to be smart. I think you have to be pragmatic about that. I think what's more important is that your goals are aligned with your mission, and you have a way to assess whether you're achieving that mission, right? That's a fundamental principle. Smart goals are a tool to get you. Yeah. Here's an example of, you get what you measure, right? Basically, if you don't, to my point, if you don't measure it, you won't get it. Or if you measure the wrong thing, you'll get the wrong behavior. Let me give you an example. I worked for a consulting firm. And at that consulting firm, we were consulting to a company that was losing money. They told us, guys, we don't get it. Our sales are going through the roof, but we're losing money. So we did the analysis, and it turns out they were measuring the wrong thing. It turns out that for them to, I think it was something like insurance. So when you sell insurance, it costs you that much money to sell it, and it will take you about 6 months before you can start making money off that customer. But what was happening? They were selling lots, but they were losing customers before the 6 months. But where's the measure? Where's the KPI? The KPI was how many you sold. So what they were doing is, they were telling the customer, they were telling their people, you get a commission for everything you sold. So all you have to do is change the metric. Basically, instead of paying the commission when they sell, pay half of it when they sell, and the other half after a year if the customer is there. That's all you have to do. They change the measure. Within, very quickly, they went from losing money to gaining money. Why? Because people are incented, all of us. Why does badging and why does gaming work? Why does Duolingo work? We like to win, right? And so people, whatever measures you give people, they will do whatever they can to exceed those measures, right? And so what happens, so coming up with the right metrics is very important because you get what you measure. You don't measure anything, you won't get anything. You measure the wrong thing, you'll get the wrong behavior. So use your KPIs and your goals as a way to incent behavior as well. That's what I'm trying to say. Also, make sure you track them on a regular basis, your goals. I'll give you an example again of a company I worked for, a startup. We used to have, let me jump to the next one first and then I'll get back to that. And make sure that your goals are not many. I say 3 to 7 here. I would rather maybe 1 to 5. 2 to 5 is even better, right? The startup I worked for, we basically had 5 objectives every year. 5 objectives for the whole company. And everybody had a bonus, but everybody's bonus was tied to how those 5 objectives were met. Whether you're in IT, in HR, in marketing, in sales, it didn't matter. These are the 5 goals for the company. We meet 80% of those goals, everybody gets their bonus. We get less than 80% of those goals, nobody, from the CEO all the way down to the janitor, gets anything. We exceed those goals, or get 90% of those goals, everybody gets 150% of the goals. But some of those goals were IT goals. But guess what? Everybody in the company was responsible. So if IT failed, not only IT loses the bonus, everybody in the company loses bonus. What did that do? It got everybody working together.
We started learning IT.
right? Sorry.
People started learning IT.
But similarly, and IT folks started selling. And the HR folks started doing marketing, right? By the way, just as an aside, for as long as I was there, because of this, and sorry, the other part of it is we every month, we went over all 5 goals. The executive team went over all the 5 goals across the whole company. So the whole company knew what those 5 goals were, how well we were doing on which, and which ones we're failing on. We'd talk about, say, we're doing well in sales, but IT has not met their needs. We'd say it publicly, and we'd say why. We'd have a discussion. By doing that on a monthly basis, by keeping them 5 and making sure everybody's aligned around the same goals, during the period I was there, every single year, everybody got 150% of their goals. Because everybody knew exactly what needs to be done, we managed it on a monthly basis, and everybody was forced to help everybody else. You have a question?
So it's a little bit tricky. Okay, let's say we choose 3 to 5 goals for a given year. For example, in 2024, at Zakir, we had our annual goals. Then we divided them into quarterly goals, then the quarterly into monthly goals, then the monthly goals into tasks.
That's fine.
But it was a little bit tricky to classify which is what should be an annual goal and what should be a monthly goal. It was tricky. Is there any structured process to do that?
I think the way I'm hearing what you're saying is you have a goal and you're phasing.
Yeah.
Phasing it really depends on your capabilities and your target. If, for example, in some cases like AV Online, it's more of an exponential growth. So our goals are doubling every year, right? In some other businesses, it's linear. It really depends on your environment, and how aggressive you want to be. But not everything is about sales and numbers. There could be some culture goals as well, right? There could be some people development goals, all these goals. It all depends on the goal, and it depends on, this is where the art comes in, I guess. Are there frameworks? I'm not aware of any, but I'm sure there are. Any other questions? Just an example, here are some examples of IT type metrics, just so you can get an idea of what SMART goals can look like. Reliability is something that you can't measure, right? So we translated that with a proxy of availability of systems. So availability of systems, 99% uptime, is a proxy for reliability. So you can always come up with proxies for those goals, right? I won't go over those, but agility, for example, how fast you're moving, how quickly you can do. Again, how do you measure that? One proxy to that is how many projects are on time, or how long does it take to resolve an issue, right? So think of the big themes you want to measure, and then if you can't measure them themselves, look for proxies for that. Let's see what's next. Step 3, stay aligned with your priorities. Any questions before I go? So you've defined the mission. We kind of touched on this, right? You define the mission, you define your goals. But excuse my French, shit happens, right? Life happens. It's French. By the way, that's a very American expression. Americans don't understand French, so excuse my Chinese. Or excuse my Arabic.
Sometimes shit is French.
Basically, life happens, right? Things happen that you might want to pivot, or force you to change things, or force you to remind. So you need to stay on top of things to make sure, one, that your mission still makes sense, and two, that your goals are aligned around your mission. To do that, you have to regularly monitor. Just like I told you about that company that had 5 goals, we monitor them on a monthly basis. Literally every month, at the end of every month, we had a company meeting. These are our goals. This is how we're doing against them, and here's what we need to do to stay on track. Communicate the priorities clearly. You have to, again, that's why I drink coffee. That's why I walk around. Mahal gets sick of me sometimes. But basically, it's all about, okay, how are you doing? Anything I can help? How are you doing against that objective? What needs to be done to stay on track? And make sure that everybody in the company, from the most junior to the most senior, knows what they're doing. There's an interesting story about Kennedy and NASA. Do you know this story? Kennedy formed NASA, right? And when Kennedy went on a tour to visit NASA, he'd go and talk to people. He saw a janitor. He said, "Sir, how are you doing?" He said, "Fine, Mr. President. I'm helping put a man on the moon." Right? And that's what you want your company to do. Everybody knows that we're trying to put a man on the moon. So I'm a person cleaning the floor, because if he cleans the floor, the engineer doesn't slip. If the engineer doesn't slip, they can develop and it goes on and on. Everybody has to be focused on the mission. And I love this story because the janitor says, "I'm helping to put a man on the moon." That's what you want everybody on the company to do. That's about alignment, that's about setting priorities. And the hardest part of staying aligned, well, you guys are young. Do you remember Nancy Reagan? And Nancy Reagan, somebody's older here. During basically when Reagan took office, and Nancy Reagan took the role of trying to educate people to stop using drugs.
Yeah, just say no.
Just say no. That was the slogan. When somebody comes to you with drugs, just say no. The hardest part of staying aligned is saying, no, this project doesn't make sense. No, this task is not the right time for. No, don't spend this money on this right now. Okay. So to stay aligned, really, revisit things, make sure that everybody understands it, and just say no.
Easier said than done.
That's the hardest part. Now to confess. I'm one, right? Yeah. Well, I'm good. All right. Questions, thoughts?
Maria, let's check online.
Okay. Are they awake online? You know what we should do? I did this in one of our meetings.
Ask them if they can hear you.
No. I tell you what I did on the first online meeting with my leadership team. Everybody turn on your cameras and stand up.
La turn on the camera. Okay, stand up.
Guess what? One person refused. Can you guess who?
Was it me?
No, that was before we.
Okay.
No.
The boss can you
Do we stand up or?
Auntie. Yes, Emma, you had a question?
No, now we heard the answer.
Are they all standing up?
Everyone stand up. We're not 45 minutes.
All right. So we talked about, we're still talking about how we define them, how do we set focus, right? Set the mission, set the goals, get everybody aligned, make sure you're written on. And the next part is make sure everybody knows what their role is. Clarify roles and responsibilities. You want people to be collaborative, but you also want people to be focused on what they're supposed to be doing. A lot of times, people get excited. On the good side, people get excited and do other things. On the bad side, people don't want to do what they're supposed to do and do other things. So keeping people focused on what they're supposed to do is really critical. And to do that, you need to clearly define roles and responsibilities. Now, most roles and responsibilities have overlap, and that's where it becomes very difficult. So you need to start working with your team to identify what the gray areas, make things basically very clear. And in fact, you also need to assign ownership for any project, any task. It's very important to have a clear person who's accountable for all that. One of my pet peeves, I think the TV has seen it. I'll give you a very simple example. When we send messages, one thing I hate, the IT team or the iPart team. I want it signed by somebody. I want it signed by a name. Why? Because if you don't have a name, you don't have an owner. And if you don't have an owner, things will fail. In fact, in the startup I worked with, Joel Daly was one of the founders. was also the CEO. We were in a meeting once, and he came into the meeting and said, guys, we've hardly ever failed. But the only times we've ever failed is because we didn't have clear ownership. From now on, before I even ask anything, the first question I'm going to ask is, who owns it? Not to blame, but so that we know where the accountability is and we know how to drive things. So key is to, one, make sure that the roles are clear. When things are ambiguous, pick up your cup of coffee, talk to the people and agree, separate them. Say you're both working on it, but you own it. You're both working on this, but you own it, right? And then the second part of it is, like goals, like missions, things evolve over time. They're not set in stone. We can restructure them, we can redo them. If you do it too often, it doesn't make sense. If you do it too late, it doesn't make sense. In fact, any questions about this?
Yes. Very.
Yeah.
When two people are working on the same project and they feel like there's this mutual accountability together, can we have more than one owner for one specific project?
You can, but then make it clear. It's preferable to have one, but there are cases where it's one, and I'll give you a good example of an environment where this is actually the case. Sapiens. Have you anyone heard of Sapiens?
Yes,
No, not.
Hariri and
No, they're a systems integrator, not Sapiens.
No.
They're like Cambridge Technology Partners. Again, Sapient is one of the largest system integrators in the world. They built their model on co-ownership. It starts at the top of two co-CEOs. And everything is co, and then every project has two owners. An architect and the project manager. They're both accountable for the success of the project. But a program manager, a project manager is responsible for the business aspect. The architect is responsible for the technical part, but they're both accountable. That works, but it's difficult. That's the only company I know that does that. But it works.
Wow. Very interesting.
Yeah, it's a very interesting model. And in fact, I remember I was there as an architect and I worked with a project manager. And we were both accountable. If a project fails, it's our heads. If the project wins, it's our heads. Both of us. I can't blame him and he can blame me. And we needed to make sure it worked. It creates a very interesting dynamic. But it's much easier to have one. But it was made very clear to us that we both own it. And this is what needs to be done, work it out between you. Now technically the architect is responsible for the technical and the project manager is responsible for the business. But it depended on the two people. Sometimes roles change. I'd agree with the project manager, I'll take care of this, you take care of that. The key is clarity. Make it clear who owns it. It's much easier to have one, but I've seen it work with goals.
But then this adds the risk. Instead of one failing and one being accountable, now they are two failing, the business and the tech at the same time.
It's much easier to do one, right? Even if they're collaborating, assign one to be the owner. And then we'll talk about how we can do that in a second. But you can make it work. Basically, it's got advantages too, because now you have two people that share, and if you give them the autonomy to decide how they're going to run the project, they can work it out themselves, right? It depends a lot on personality, it depends on company culture, it depends on many things, it depends on the project. Like I said, Sapient is the only company I know that does that. There might be others, and they're very successful. Very successful. By the way, their track record, I don't know if you, as an aside, in software development and IT, do you know what the standard success rates for IT projects and software projects?
Revenue or number of projects.
No, successful projects.
20%.
Something like 60% failure, 70% failure. How many of them on time?
No.
Hardly. How many on budget? Hardly. Sapiens record? 100% on budget, 90% on time, 100% success.
Wow.
So they have a model that works for them, but they're unique. So it's like they're the unicorn of that, right? Actually, part of the reason I joined that company is because I wanted to learn their secrets. Some other time we're over coffee, I'll tell you. All right. So the question then becomes, any question online? So one tool to help you define roles, and one tool I found very useful for me, is the RACI matrix. You guys have heard of the RACI matrix? RACI stands for Responsible, Accountable, Consultant, Informed. Basically, it's a matrix. I don't know if you can see it. Each row is a task, or each row is a project, or each row is a goal, right? And the columns are the names of the people or of the groups that are responsible. Each cell, that on each row, in each cell in each row, you assign an A, accountable, R, responsible, C, consultant, and I, informed. What does that mean? Let's say we're trying to build, I don't know, a payroll system, right? So task one is building the payroll system. The accountable is the person who is responsible to make sure that happens. It's their neck on the line.
The payroll manager.
Or payroll man, or the IT guy, depending on what the project is, right? But it is the person who owns that task. They don't necessarily have to do all of it, but if it succeeds, it's their success. If it fails, it's their failure. They're the ones who own. The R are the people who are actually doing the work. Typically, everybody who's accountable does a lot of the work, but not necessarily the work. So I'm building a software payroll system. I'm accountable, but I work with the payroll manager to do it. So I am A, but with both R's. Okay? Consult are the stakeholders that I need to check with and get their approvals or get their buy-in before I move forward. And the I's are, I'm just keeping you in the loop. The only rule that I apply to this matrix, every row has one and only one A. You can have multiple R's, you can have multiple C's, you can have multiple I's, but one and only one A.
Unless it's safe.
Unless it's safe, but then, you know what, on that name, I put both names.
Okay.
Yeah, because they're the same everything. Yes?
So, and this is something I think about. Let's say you're accountable, or whoever is accountable, and underneath there's 3 responsible. And here we see 2 responsible at task 1, for example. What if the accountable person gave clear instructions and then the responsible people couldn't deliver? Is it in the capacity of the accountable person to tell, for example, the informed person, hey, they just weren't good enough?
Good question. Part of being accountable, by definition, you're leading. So you have to start acting like a leader, right? Part of leading, you could be an engineer. By the way, a leader doesn't have to be a manager. A leader could be anyone in the organization. And by the way, at Inflow, the startup, we wanted everybody to have leadership skills. Right? But that's another story. What I'm trying to say is, if you're accountable, you're leading by definition. Leading means influencing, directing, keeping stakeholders up to date. If things are not happening, you need to let your superiors know so that they can address it. Yeah. Just because, I hope I don't get into politics, but one of the things that really frustrates me, when our president said, "Makhalloon." Excuse me, you're the guy in charge, keep makhalloon, right? So I don't want somebody accountable to say makhalloon. That doesn't fly with me. You're not able to get the things done. Let your managers or superiors or partners know so that we can address the issue. Maybe we need to fire him. Maybe we need to teach him. Maybe we need to put you on another project. This is the wrong project for you, right? But part of being accountable is being transparent and letting people know where you are, as opposed to one of the things I do not tolerate is shifting blame. And if you're in charge, I expect you to do whatever it takes to get it happen. If you're running into problems, come to your leader. What's the leader's role to do? Remove obstacles. It's my job to help you fix that problem, but I want you to take it on first. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I guess the talent is not spending too long before informing your manager that it's not working.
I'll tell you one of my rules. I don't know if you've heard that one before. We used to call it at Sapiens, we used to call it the 10-minute rule. But it doesn't have to be 10 minutes, meaning short period. If you're stuck on something for 10 minutes, escalate. You need to figure out what the 10 minutes is in yours. Is it 1 day? Is it 1 week? Is it half an hour? Is it 3 months? But very quickly escalate issues. Because if you escalate issues, the idea of escalation is not to punish. The idea of escalation is to catch a problem before it becomes a bigger problem. Yes? Okay. Here's an example, but do we have time? We have half an hour? Okay, so I'm not going to go through this, but you can read it on your own. This is an example of a bakery. Okay? Now you might recognize this bakery. But basically, basically there are 4 people in this bakery, right? And 3 tasks. Who's going to bake? Who's going to price and market? Who's going to sell, right? And as you notice, Brenda, she's the master chef, so she's accountable for the baking. But she needs help from Abby, who's the sous chef. So the A is with Randa, but Randa and Abby are working on it. They need to check with Kara, who's the sales cashier, to make sure that is what we're baking selling, right? So, and should we bake this? Should we not bake this? And just keep the finance manager informed so he can keep track, right? On the other hand, the marketing and pricing, the accountability is with a finance manager. Because he or she knows, it's Ibra, I don't know if Ibra is a he or she, is responsible to know that. But then, the work is being done by Renda, because she's baking, right? And she knows what the costs are and what and then Renda and Kara need to be, you get the idea, right?
As if you're raising a child.
Exactly. You want to start putting, what are the ethical and what are the behavioral things that matter to you, that you want your team to be involved in. Why is that important? Because first, that will help you drive who you hire. Because one of the things I do is, and in fact we're doing it right now, is whenever we hire somebody on my team, Maha and the team, they decide, but before they get hired, I want to check them. Because I want to see, do they fit in the culture? Okay. I know the team does that, but so culture is important. I'll give you the other example about culture. If I gave you a goal of getting us $1 million in revenue by next year, how you get that million is also important. Robbing a bank is not acceptable, right? But if I don't tell you that, why not? So core values are about the behaviors. And so the key there is to identify, just like when you define the mission and the goals, think about the kind of behaviors that are acceptable to you. Get your smaller team to agree on them, and then start enforcing them in everything you do. And we'll talk a bit more about some example of core values. But once you do that, and then the key is the behaviors are intangible. But there's a way to measure them. The way to measure them is if you tie them back to behaviors. By the way, Maha was core in developing our core values at IT and spreading them and embedding them. So the way to do them is, once you agree on the core values, make sure that they translate to real measurable behaviors. Like lying, like showing up on time, like sharing information. These are things that you can kind of measure. Is this somebody? And then do 2 things. The very least you need to do is tie them back to the performance reviews of your employees. And in fact, on our team in IT, our performance review is 2 pieces. The first piece is the core values. The second piece is projects.
You can all see together.
All see together. Okay. So all the teams under my team, right? So basically the idea is, when it's time for the annual review, I'm going to ask you a whole bunch of things. We have a discussion about one of the things we talk about. One of our core values is integrity. And under integrity, there are 3 or 4 behaviors. We have a discussion about how we behave under integrity during that year. That's part of your review. Then we talk about projects and objectives, etc. But the core that's one way to measure it. The other way to measure it, and you need a marketing person like Maha, is we started creating, we created like little tickets. For each core value, we had a ticket. And every time somebody exceeded the core value, somebody on the team would write them a note on that ticket. Thank you for exhibiting the integrity. Core value. Thank you for exhibiting the team. And we put them on the board. And we'd and every time we have a team meeting, we'd celebrate whoever did those things. So all of a sudden, core values are not just words and theoretical things, which, by the way, most companies, that's what they end up, but they become behavior. Then when you're hiring people, you check for skills, but you check for core values. Making sense? One other thing we used to do is, on a quarterly basis, send a survey to the whole team. Tell us, Rino, tell us on the survey, how do you think your team and the company has been doing against this core value, Any suggestions to make it better? By doing this on a regular basis, people start understanding that these are the things that really matter. There are 2 things that matter, the goals, but also the core values. By doing that, that starts building the culture.
Very difficult to test. When things are running, they will not show. And when the company is in crisis, where
That's when they will
you
show.
need the core value, they will show and they will be surprised.
But that's why you need to start doing it from the very beginning.
It's super difficult to test the core value when things are running because
It's not testing. Sorry, I'm interrupting. If you agree what those core values are, communicate them with your team. Do you do regular reviews? Right. When somebody's not being accountable, you need to call them on it. Right? If in your discussion say, okay, today we're going to say, how are we doing against those core values? On your one-on-ones, tell me about how do you feel the team is doing about accountability? You will open up and you say, you know what, we're doing fine, but Rida is not accountable. And then you can have a discussion about that. You see what? The trick, but you bring up a good point. These are things that you need to instill very early on. If people are not adhering to the course values, there has to be consequences.
I have a very strange example of that.
Yeah.
So we have a habit in our society when there's an accident, we all jump in pretending to help, but end up above each other. So there are 120 people at the workshop and we had an accident. So 6 persons held everybody out to have a perimeter for the Red Cross to come. These 6, I made them run the show.
Yeah. Good.
So this is how you see indirectly. But to relate that to any written test,
No, but but you know what? Next step could be, what you could have done is, one suggestion would be, after that incident, have a team meeting. Say, how did we behave this way? What happened now? What should we do next?
So if you do that meeting, the people who talk are typically the worst who reacted during the event.
Call them on it.
And the people who would say quiet are those who did the right thing.
As a leader, bring out the quiet ones. And that's part of the leader. It's a conversation, right? It's a conversation. Like I said, core values is very hard, but it's also very critical, right? Because it is what creates the culture. And to your point, you bring up a very good point. The point is, you want to have all this in place before you have a crisis.
For the startup, with
It's easier, by the way, because you're just starting.
yeah, but at the same time, as a founder, and I'm the one also engaged in daily activities, I need someone else to judge me because I might not be adhering to these core values.
Who's that someone else?
That's something I need to think of.
Well, let me tell you, that I can give up 2 ideas right now. 3 ideas. Your peers, your employees, and your clients. Ask them. Ask them. And by the way, by asking them, you're exhibiting one of those core values, right? Say, I care about those core values and I want to make sure I'm living up to them. Tell me, how am I doing? What can I do better? That's the softer side of things, but it's also the harder side. But I will tell you, I mean, the more successful companies I worked for had a much stronger culture than the ones that failed.
Goes well for countries.
It goes across, we're a community, right? And what are core values really? Core values are, what are the acceptable behaviors for us to work as a group? That's what it's all about. It's not about achieving the mission, it's about us working as a group and us interacting with our clients. Let me give you some examples that we did at AUB. These are the ones we did at IT for AUB, right? We have 6 core values, and I would argue that that's on the high side. Right? We said we wanted the core, and the way we did this is like we did the mission. I started with proposing something. I got the leadership team to edit it. Then once we did that, we got a bigger team to refine it, and then we shared it with everybody else. Again, we wanted people to have buy-in. And we had 6: integrity, excellence, teamwork, learning, innovating, and accountability. They all sound reasonable, right? You could have some subset, you can have something different, but this is what mattered to us. Under each one of those, we had 3 behaviors. Why? Because it's the behavior that, what do you mean by accountability? Well, by accountability, where is it? We mean you meet your commitments. You appropriately communicate changes, and you adhere to organizational policies. So every year when I review someone, I check. Rida, I always pick on you, because it's the only name I can remember right now. Rida, how do you think you did by meeting your obligations? Let's have a discussion. How well did you communicate changes? And how well did you, how are you doing against policies? Did you rob a bank today? Right? By having those discussions, by having those core value discussions at all times, all the time, by reinforcing it through performance reviews, by even tied to, one company we tied it to the bonus. I don't care if you met all your targets. You don't meet the core values. In fact, I will tell you this right now. I shouldn't say it out loud. So, when I first came to AUB, I fired 2 people. Those 2 people I fired were excellent programmers. One of them was the only specialist in the system that we had. I fired them because they didn't meet core values. Because one of them would not share knowledge, and both of them were not team players. And people at the executive level at AUB came to me and said, what are you going to do? I said, it's going to be bumpy, but if you give me 3 months to recover, I need to do this. And that did 2 things. One, it removed the bad apples, right, very quickly. It was risky, but in my judgment, that was less of a risk than keeping them on board, because they were destroying the team. So one, it basically removed the bad apples, but there's another subtle thing. It sent the message to the whole team that this is what's acceptable and this is what's not. And it helped get the team reinforced. And actually there was a third part to it. Actually I did that in another team, right? So 1, it sent a message. 2, it removed the bad apple. But there was a third one that was really important.
Show your character.
Other than showing my character, the rest of the team said, oh my God, we feel better now because we have a boss who cares about us and will remove the bad people. And by the way, every time I fired someone, don't talk about layoffs. Layoffs are very good. Thank you. Thank you. One of the core values at my team is bring your boss a coffee.
It's in our core values.
How many points?
My point is, I forgot what I was going to say. What was I saying? Yeah, other than layoffs, the only firing I've done is not because they were not meeting goals, it's because their core behaviors were bad. To me, the behaviors are much more important. If you got people with the right behaviors, you can achieve it. Anyway, sorry.
No, I had a question about being lenient versus being
Straight.
straight.
What's the balance?
Yeah.
I am known to be, you have to ask Mark, but I'm known to be very patient. And what I like to do is, you don't, let me give it to you the other way. The person I fired in the US, one of the people I fired in the US, I said, Joe, I need to talk to you, come to my office. He said in my office, do you know what this is about? You know what his answer was? Yes. I said, okay, pack your stuff in. So it was not a surprise because I had been working with him for a while, right? And I had, part of that is making sure that you're transparent and honest and say, and catch it as a, look, Joe, this is my problem with you. What are we going to do to fix it? This is what the problem with the team is. What are you going to do to fix it? It had been going on for 3 or 4 months. By the time I called him to my office, he knew exactly why he was there.
Okay.
That's my stuff.
Okay. So
It would-
lenient.
No, not lenient. Honest, transparent, work with them, honest, transparent, work with them. If it's not working, then
Okay.
it's about being, and that's hard, that's not easy, that's very hard. In fact, I'll tell you honestly, for the 3 nights before I fired the guy, I could not sleep. Right? Because I want to make sure I'm doing good, but that's me. There are people, the worst thing in my opinion to do is for you to fire him and him not know why. Now, I was told by HR, don't tell him the reason. Because there's legal issues in the States. Just as an aside, most of the states in the US are employment at will. Do you know what that means? It means there's no contract. And I can quit anytime I want. You can fire me anytime you want, and there's no harm, no foul. So when I told HR, I want to explain to him why, I said, don't even try. I said, why? Because if you give, it is your right to get rid of him, because you don't want him. But if you tell him why, he can challenge it in court. So, but that's American, right? But the point is, my point I'm trying to say is, I worked with him for a few months. But by the time it came to farm, it was not a surprise. The other 2, same thing. To a lesser degree, because it's in Lebanon and Lebanese culture is different.
It's a very smart club.
Sorry?
It's a very smart club.
That's part of the reason I think economics work well in the US, because I never had a contract in the US. I had an offer letter, but not a contract. And it's employment that way, meaning I can tell you, okay, I don't want you, please leave. That's it. And you can quit any time, that's fine. Now, the typical mode is unless it's a firing, you give 2-week notice. If you're more senior, you give more. But because you don't want to ruin relationships. But the law said, there's no law that says you have to keep them at all Darwin or Darwin. Only is legally found. Okay. Any questions about core values? So the core values to me are core, right? It's about, this is how you build a culture. This is how you manage team dynamics. By the way, if you have a conflict with someone, here's another way to deal with, use the core values. So, tell me how this relates to us being honest. Use them in your conversation. Or I feel that you're not being transparent with me. Can we discuss that? Right? It takes away the emotion and turns it into something functional. Okay. Now that we've talked about the simple stuff, it's all about results. You want to succeed, your board wants you to succeed, your shareholders want you to succeed. So always focus on results. One of my guys, Walid, do you know Walid? And an expression in Arabic I can get to the khabra is it afra or it's not afra. No. A lot of activity but no production. Don't measure production. Don't measure activity. Measure results. So your goals have to be measured, right? Sometimes you say, hey, but I'm very busy. What have you produced? My general attitude at work is, this is your objective, you're accountable, get it done. I don't care how you do it, just get it within core values. Don't rob a bank, right? But that means you have to define clear deliverables, right? And you need to constantly review. Celebrating achievements is really important, and people forget that. And by the way, this doesn't have to be a bonus. It could be as simple as, I noticed you did this, thank you so much. But it has to be, that works if it's genuine. It has to be genuine, it has to be real, it has to be specific.
But every now and then you should change the reward.
Could be, yeah. But it's, people want to feel appreciated. I would argue, and they get appreciated in many ways. Compensation is part of it. A gift is part of it. But human interaction is a big part of it as well. And you have to find the right mix. I'm going to say something maybe handy and good that close your ears, but sometimes giving money as a reward is not the right thing. Because it can look and feel like a bribe. And it can start setting an expectation. Oh, I'll only do this if I'm going to get the reward. So you have to manage that, and that's a big part of that with the, I'm not saying you should do it, you should. And there are times when you certainly should, right? But you have to manage it properly, right? It's about the appreciation. And if you're going to give money, make sure that it's about something very specific in appreciation for something above and beyond. Yes, Marcy.
Yes, been using global bank so many times.
Sorry.
We said global bank so many times.
Yeah.
And I'm reading Stalin, how he wrote and came to power. And you know, he financed his entire career by robbing banks in Georgia.
There you go.
Literally, that was the main source of
That was the
financing
plan.
for Bolsheviks for 5 years.
And what did he do then? Massacre everybody.
Yes. And so
That's his core value.
it's that's another debate. Let's,
Yeah, yeah,
let's keep the
yeah.
joke.
But my point is, it is about, it's really about the culture, right? And team dynamics is about culture. And if I were to ask, distill it down to two things. You as a leader need to be gentle. And then make sure that the core values are what you feel about. And make sure you enforce it in everything you do. One thing I noticed, I've said this a few times. I don't know if you've worked with or interacted with the large companies like Oracle and others. I personally hate working with Oracle. Oracle actually reflects Larry Ellison's personality. Apple reflects Steve Jobs' personality, if you think about it. So you as the leader, your personality is going to become the personality of the company. And so keep that in mind.
Actually, I have a question that I'm facing now in the business or in my startup, which is actually, is it from where you recruit or from the location you ask for the people you need to have in your team has an effect on how this person or this individual will contribute to the value or to the mission and vision of the business?
That's a loaded question. I would like to say, the way I think about it, what's that song? People are people. I think it's Virendra.
That's a big effect.
It has an effect, but not everybody is going to do the same. And I think that's one part. The other part is sometimes you have no choice but to hire from that environment. So your job is to do two things. Select the ones that fit your culture the most, and then educate and enforce your culture on the team. No, because I work with no people. Different cultures react differently to different things. But things like the core values we came up with can be generic, right? Can be generic. I mean, it doesn't, everybody say, I want teamwork, right? I think that's an individual thing, not a cultural thing. Now, different cultures deal with teams differently, and the mechanics of doing it. But so you might need to adapt things. But I'm trying to be careful. Americans are very the opposite, our way or the highway, right? And that's why they don't do very well internationally. But the flip side is, I guess my point is the environment impacts that, but it doesn't. But at the same time, I'm so sure I can find right people that can fit that. And I need to, and you might need to refine the culture slightly, right? Trying to think of examples. In Germany, 9 o'clock means 9 o'clock. In Lebanon, 9 o'clock means 9:10. So you might be flexible 9:10, but not 9:20. See what? So you can do things like that to adapt to the environment. I don't think that answers it.
It's probably we can have a discussion later. 5 years, not to go to the previous lesson.
Yeah.
For 5 years, on the Innovation Day, the speech was 50% about plagiarism. And for 5 years, the UB tried to take away plagiarism, and we failed miserably when I was on the UB. So the culture, this has to do with our culture, not the UB.
No, but I would argue if I was Waterbury, I wasn't there when Waterbury was there. But if I was Waterbury, or actually this is really the provost, fire 1 or 2 faculty, expel 1 or 2 students, and things would change, right? So it's not just about, so he was talking, but you need to take action and you need to enforce. And you need to make it sure that there's a consequence.
The only professor, because we had a serious case, we had a serious case, the only professor who took action against the students, the professor was fired.
To me, that's not the local culture. To me, that's basically the unit. I wasn't there, but so I can't tell. But it looks to me that the leadership was not able to execute what they wanted to do. Part of making sure that culture exists is make sure that there are consequences. People understand it's not just words. That's why I'm saying prior to the performance review, take actions, confront problems when they happen. And in fact, one of the items of staying focused on results is address underperformance immediately. To your point, right? How long do I wait? This person's not, don't wait. It's not working, bring it up, deal with it. If you're the guy on top, you can move them on the project, deduct their pay, get them off the team, teach them. Maybe they're not performing because they can't, so you try to help. But if it's not getting anywhere, make the change. These are the hard parts. By the way, just as an aside, your old founders here? Yeah. Let me tell you how I became the CTO of Inflow, which is the startup that almost got me retired.
Yeah.
When I joined, before I joined them, they had 3 founders. Okay? They're very good friends and there are 3 founders. One of the founders was the CTO. They're good friends, they're best friends. But he wasn't doing his job. Guess what? They fired their co-founder and best friend. Because they were focused on, results to them were more important than the friendship and the people. So keep that in mind. Being on the top is not easy. And if you want results, you might have to take some hard decisions. I'm not saying you should do that, but this is something you need to keep in mind. I would not have been the CTO there had they not fired their best friend. I'm not saying that I'm glad they fired them. No. What I'm saying is because they were focused. Our focus is achieve those results. And we'll do whatever it takes to achieve those results, including firing one of the co-founders. Right?
So the mission is more important than the people.
Actually, good point. I was going to go back to that.
They fired them because they care about the people.
No. Basically, think about mission and people where it's coming from. It's coming from the military, right? Both are important. But do I sacrifice the mission or sacrifice people? I sacrifice people to accomplish the mission.
To save other people.
And save other people. So they're both important, but when it comes to shove, if you want to succeed, the mission has to be more important. But you can't do the mission without taking care of the people, right? So it's not about abusing people. If you abuse people, you won't work. You have to take care of the people. But if you have to make a choice between progressing the mission at the expense of people or pleasing the people at the expense of the mission, as a leader, the mission is more important. If it's not, then you're in the wrong business. Sounds cool, but yeah. Now, there are ways to deal with that humanely, right? And there are ways that you do it. What you don't want to do is the company once wanted to lay off people. You know how they did it?
They just deactivated the doors.
They flipped the fire alarm. Everybody went out. Closed the doors. People whose cards didn't work were fired. You don't want to do that. On the other hand, I've had to lay off, at Inflow, we had to lay off a couple hundred people. And because we took time to do it and we did it right, each one of the people who got laid off came to me and to the other execs said, thank you for working with us. We feel sorry for you. They were feeling sorry for us for having to go through this. And please let us know how we can help. So there are ways that you can do it humanly. And there are ways that you can do it in a way that's dignified and helps people. And in fact, all those people who got laid off found better things. We partly helped them, but so there's the close the door, and if it doesn't work, you're fired. And there's let's take our time and make sure we treat them as humans and treat them dignified. And at Inflow, even though it was funded by 3 military guys, actually it's literally every single one of them came to me and said, Yousif, because we had one-on-ones after, said, how are you, I tell them, how are you feeling, is everything okay? They say, we're fine, are you okay? You have to go through all of that, right? So there are ways to do it. Now we're serious. Any questions about results? In the end, you want results, right? And you can't do that without trust. Ooh, do you still have time, guys? We're over. I can move faster if you want. Okay. Okay, all right. So basically, trust is the key. And as leaders, you need to build trust, and trust depends on two things, on character and competence. I know at least in technology, when talking to engineers, I don't know how many of you are engineers. I don't know if you've worked with really strong engineers. Engineers will not trust you unless they know that you know at least as much as they do or they more. Right? I bet that's the same with doctors. The same with
The problem they weren't able to solve.
So you need to have enough expertise for them to trust you. But then but even if you're the best at it, if you have a lousy character, they won't trust you. So it's a combination, right? So you need to make sure that you have the expertise, or if you don't have the expertise, be honest about it, but ask the right question. And make sure you gather enough knowledge so that you can show them that they can trust you. I remember a story when I started as an engineer, I got assigned a technician. The technician had like 30 years of experience, so he knew much more than I did. And I was this fresh graduate who knew nothing. That was a challenge to get his trust. But I had to quickly come up to speed so that he can know, one, I'm not a jerk, and two, I know enough, and three, I know what I don't know, and I do know, right? So it's a combination of character and competence. And a big part of that is being consistent. You said something. It's like raising children. How is the best way to raise children? Be consistent. No, you can't eat that. No, you can't eat with your fingers. If you're consistent with that, they'll learn it. If one day you let them, another day you don't, you're not going to get it, right? And integrity, transparency, you need to be yourself, right? Be authentic, be yourself. One thing I don't have much time to talk about, but something you should look at, and if you want, we can talk about it more. Check out Vulnerability-Based Trust by Patrick Lencioni. His book is the 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. Right? We can talk about this a bit more. Can I put a plug in? A lot of this material is based on a book Sandy and I wrote, From Peak to Lead, and we talk about that in that book as well. I'll tell you more information if you're interested. But vulnerability-based trust is a very important concept, which is basically having people trust you by being vulnerable, right? Being honest. By being honest and opening up, people trust you more, and you can start building on that. Acknowledge achievements, we said that, honor commitments, and supporting your team members. Again, I say, as CITO, my role is really to set direction, remove obstacles out of the way, and talk to people and see what their issues are so I can see if I can help them resolve it.
Where does emotional intelligence go?
All of that is part of emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence, and we won't have time again to talk about this today, but I refer to it in the end. It's about controlling your emotions, it's about knowing yourself, it's being about self-aware, and it's about being authentic. Right? And emotional intelligence is all about techniques to do that, make that happen. If you have the time to do that, it's important. I think a key element here is what Colin Powell says. The moment the soldiers stop coming to you with their problems, you stop leading them. When they start hiding things from you, you're not leading anymore, and things are going to go down. I'll give you an example again at Inflow. We had our first client. Basically, we built 19 data centers across the world, across the US. We had built just our first data center, and our reputation, we're building our reputation that we provide uptime all the time. We guarantee you that your system will never go down. And we had our only and first customer, which was AOL, and our data center went. That could have ruined the whole business. That's how big the problem was. So I was working with Joel, the guy I talked about before, and this engineer comes in and says, the data center just went down. We looked at him and said, okay, go see what the issue is and fix it and keep us posted. 5 minutes later, an engineer comes in. Says, Joel, can I tell you something? I said, sure. I shut down the data center. I was cleaning the floor and I accidentally pressed the emergency off switch. He said, thank you for telling me. Now go help him fix it and we'll deal with it later. He looked at me and said, it's good he came to me. Had he not come to me, I would have fired him. But there was a level of trust that he was able to come and say, I almost shut down your business. But that's the kind of level of trust. Had he not come to us because he was scared, it would have taken us maybe 3 weeks to figure out what the problem was. But he came to us, we immediately knew what the problem is. We changed the design of the data center, we put a cover around the emergency switch, and that problem never happened again. So trust is important. Connecting and engaging. You want to keep connected with your staff. One thing that we're always too busy for, but we need to find time. Find the time to do one-on-ones. Formal one-on-ones. Sit down with your team one-on-one on a regular basis, whether it's weekly, monthly, or at least 2 months, right? Even if it's a half hour, have a strict agenda and walk through it. What have you achieved? What are your problems? How can I help you? Where can we go? And we started this discussion by being present. How did that start? I forgot. Be present. A leader needs to be present. One of the things I tell my leadership team is, yeah, we can work remotely. I can work remotely. It's not about me doing the work. It's about me being present for the team, physically, mentally, and emotionally. One thing I like to always say is, leaders, as a leader, you're always on stage. People are watching you no matter what you do. I tell them, if I go out to dinner with my wife, I'm on stage. Because somebody who sees me, right? So part of emotional intelligence, right? But the part of also you're always on stage. When you're on stage, there are different characters. It's up to you to choose which character you want to play at which one. Am I the angry one? Am I the compassionate one? Am I the happy one? It's about being self-aware. But keep in mind,
The situation of the
being self-aware of yourself. Yeah. So one thing I joke around sometimes. I say, I call it strategic anger. Sometimes, like, I know that I need to be angry, but I'm not really angry. So I work myself up so I can become angry so I can send a message because they need to see the angry part. Very few people have seen that. But so you have to be self-aware. Sometimes I'm very angry, but I need to show I'm calm so I control this.
absorb it somehow.
So you're also, but being present is critical. I think if there's one thing that's most important about leadership, it's being present. Being present. I'll give you a funny story. I've been traveling last summer a lot. I've been going back and forth, going back and forth. I finally came back to the office. I walked in, and somebody walked into my office and said, "Oh, you're back. Makes me feel so much more relaxed when you're here." Right? And it's somebody that works for somebody who works for somebody who works for you. So being present is important. And I was thinking, all I'm doing is sitting on my computer. Being present is important. One of the things I've been doing I haven't been able to do it, and then we start doing it again, then now the work in it, is one thing I'd like to do, and to be present and connect, is I established a coffee with the CIA, my admin assistant. Basically sends a note to everybody, says, if you want to have a coffee, let us know. And we just have a coffee and chat. That helps connect with people. I also try to joke about me, which I joke about myself, is what do you do all day? I carry my cup of coffee and walk around when I have time. And I need to make more time. You need to make time, especially when you're small. Just walk around the team with a coffee or Pepsi or whatever you do. Hey, how you doing? Tell me about it. What's on your mind? Yeah, it's checking in. Doing that alone does two things. Connects you, they feel appreciated, and boy, will you hear about it. You'll know where the real issues are. Couple more things. Manage conflict constructively. Conflict is inevitable. It will happen. In fact, if there's no conflict, that's again part of the Sioni's dysfunctions. He has a name for it. I can't remember what it's called, but you want conflict. What you don't want is conflict that gets hidden under the table. So healthy conflict is important. If there are issues, you need to break them up. But what you want to do is make sure to do that, you have to create the space. You need to make sure that people can trust you and let you know there are issues. And when there are issues, bring the people together and have a logical discussion about it. Take the emotions out, establish ground rules. Say, okay, part of our rules is when we have an issue, here's how we talk to each other, here's how we behave. And address issues promptly, don't let them fester. It's very easy, by the way, I'm guilty of all of the above, right? But make sure that you don't wait until it's too late. Just think about home, right? Things will boil, and then explode. You want to catch them before they explode, before they become a problem. That's part of the hardest part of building culture and being part of the team and being a leader. I have a problem with it. Do you have a minute? I want to discuss an issue with you. This is what I saw happen. Focus on the behavior, don't focus on the person. This is again about raising kids, right? One of the techniques with children, you don't tell them you're bad. You tell them you did a bad thing. Right? So, it's not that you're a bad person, but you did a bad thing. Let's talk about the bad thing you did so that you don't do it again. But if I tell you you're bad, you shut down and you get insulted and you get hurt. Be personal. And by the way, conflict is a great part to create new things and spark new ideas. Conflict is coming from one of multiple areas. It could be coming from misunderstandings, it could be clash of characters, it could be coming from, so it's an opportunity to identify issues and fix them. One of the things I learned a long time ago is, one of my bosses used to say is, we fix problems by process. A lot of times the issues are not because people are bad, but because the process is not clear, or because they're not clear on the objectives, or they have conflicting objectives. Right? So this is an opportunity to refine objectives, refine processes. In addition to addressing personnel issues, it could be because the guy's a jerk. Address it. Where are we now? Here are some, I'm not going to go through this, but here are some hints again from our book about symptoms of a healthy and unhealthy team. Take a look at them. They might give you hints. And last but not least, It's all about you guys. You have to role model.
Take it or leave it.
No, you have to, it's all about the leaders.
When you say lead by example, you mean get our hands dirty as well with the team? Or
I mean, model the behaviors. Right? Model the behaviors. What do you expect your team to do? You do. I'll give you an example of what I'm not doing it as much because my back hurts, but I walk on campus. When I see trash on the ground, I pick it up. But I do a bit more than that. Don't share that with anyone. I make sure people see me. Why? Because I want to see people. If one of the senior leaders is picking up trash, maybe I should pick up trash too. Yeah. So model the behaviors you want. You don't want people to lie, you don't lie. You want people to be transparent, be transparent. Right? Be approachable and visible and present, we talked about that. And then balance everything. Develop your emotional intelligence, right? We talked about opening on stage. One big thing you need to do also is delegate, right? And learn how to delegate, that's an art. But delegation depends on trust. I have 2 stories about that. When I first came to AEB, we had the network go down. And so the director of the network came to my office and said, the network is down. And I was sitting with the assistant CIO, who used to be the CIO before me. The assistant CIO's reaction was, okay, let me jump in and fix it. I said, Waleed, sit down. Hamad, go fix it. Do you need anything from me? He said, no. I said, go fix it. Waleed, what's wrong? I gotta go. I said, sit down. Let Hamad do his work. He ended up fixing it faster. He ended up feeling trusted. And from then on, he was like, perfect, right? The fact that we trusted him, the fact that he did his work, my job and Waleed's job was to notify the environment and manage that chaos. His job was to fix it. And especially for founders, it's very hard to take your hands off. It's your baby, right? It's your baby. It's a fine balance, though, but you have to trust people. Is Maha here?
Oh, in your office.
Maha used to come to me with some questions like, Yousif, I want to do this, this, or this. What do you think? I used to tell her, you do it. I trust you. I said, don't say that again. But trusting them, now, knowing who to trust and how to trust is important, right? But that does a few things. One, it builds and empowers the team, gets them to do the things they need to do, but also it frees you up to do the more, I want to say, different things, if not more important things. By trusting Maha to do her thing, I can focus on more strategic stuff. By trusting Muhammad to fix the network, I can deal with the CEO and the president and all the shouting there, right? That's it, I think. Here are some resources for you to think about. I just put them here, right? Goal setting, motivation theories. I know the scorecard framework is very popular. Frankly, I'm not a big fan, but people like it. Check it out. It's a way about defining goals and balancing them between practical, hard goals and soft goals, etc. Motivation, there's Maslow's, gives you behavior stuff, Maslow's hierarchy, if you've heard of those. Diversity and inclusion is very important to not have everybody on your team like you. It's very easy for us to hire people like us. You want some level of conflict. You want some level of, you don't want, you want challenge, right? I think you want this, you want same core values, but different characters, if that makes any sense. One of the things I like about my team, I love each individual, but if you put them all together, we have conflict. But that's healthy conflict. We don't all agree on everything. That's good, because then you start getting creative stuff. And you see things, situational leadership is more about trying to adapt to different things, some resources here. And my favorite, my plug, From Geek to Lead, the book that Sandy and I wrote. A lot of this is in the book, and there's much more about communication. It's more, so if you're interested, you can check that. That's all I have. I hope I didn't bore you.